I recently replayed Resident Evil 5 for the first time in years and I started writing an analysis on it. After typing away on a few pages, I felt like that I would not really add much to the conversation of this game. Everyone knows how bad the AI partner is. Everyone knows this is not a scary game, this is an action game. And everyone knows that Chris is on steroids, so there's not much more that can really add all these years later. However, the versus mode in this game has not really been given a retrospective analysis. Versus mode is a PvP game mode where players would face off against each other in different arenas to score the most points. To be fair, this mode was just DLC that was released about a month after this game was released on Xbox 360 and PS3 back in 2009. Thus, most of the talk about this game at that time was how Capcom was just greedy and should have put the mode into the main game instead of selling it separately. People also pointed out that Versus mode was very similar to Mercenaries mode, just that Versus mode has you up against other players instead of just being co-op. Thus, Versus mode had much negative flack back then. However, when Resident Evil 5 got re-released in 2016 for the Xbox One and PS4, it included Versus mode and all other DLC without having people to pay extra. However, at that point, the game was already so old that no one really talked about the Versus mode. So, we are going to look at this mode based on its own merits without the negative context it had originally. While this mode is fairly bare bones, there is still enjoyment to the gameplay. I always find PvP multiplayer modes for games not really built for it quite interesting because it requires the player to think much differently. You cannot run and gun in this game since you can only shoot when standing still. Thus, Resident Evil 5's mechanics and controls can be truly frustrating at first when fighting against other players. After a few hours though, you learn the maps, weapon spawns, and different strategies needed to win games, and then you realize that it's actually pretty fun to play despite its issues. The first thing people may wonder is how does a game where you have to stop and aim and shoot work when you're playing against other players? Would this make for fun gameplay or make you feel stiff with lack of control? Starting off, you would definitely feel restricted in how you approach other players. Aiming stops your character from moving and you cannot quickly dive away from danger. When you get into close range fights, it leads to these moments where you're both constantly re-aiming and dodging to move out of the way of the other person's shot until someone is able to kill the other. This can definitely turn away people from this game mode because in third-person shooters like Gears of War, you have much more maneuverability and a cover system. I'm not sure if Versus mode would have been better with the cover system they had from the story mode, because it's really stiff and awful, but it would have given players more strategies on approaching other players. You won't stay hidden since you can see where everyone is on the map, but instead of being in the open shooting someone from long range, you would have been able to get behind a wall and pop a few shots and then go back into cover. Without the cover system, you have to slowly strafe in and out of cover. That's why changing the default control settings from Type D to Type B would mitigate the stiffness of your character. In Type D, the camera can only view where your character is facing. You can move it up or down, but you can't shift the camera view left or right without having your whole body slowly turn with it. I eventually changed it to Type B where the camera can be moved not only up or down, but every direction without having to force changing the direction your character is facing. So, as your character starts running, you can check your sides for enemies and not be restricted to what's only in front of you. You would not have been able to do this with Type D, though, because your camera will only face what's in front of your character. Additionally, the way aiming works in this game is that your character points their weapon to the direction the camera was facing. This makes it for Type D that you can only aim the direction your character is facing, because the camera cannot look side to side, only what's in front of you. Thus, you have to slowly turn your body to aim at someone. However, for Type B, if your camera is facing your left side while your character is facing straight and you aim, your gun will immediately point in that direction. This makes Type B give much more flexibility in terms of movement and combat. This comes in handy when facing off enemies at close range when you're trying to get a good shot at them, because now you don't have to slowly shift your whole body. You can just change the direction of your camera and immediately aim your weapon at that enemy. This also works when you jump up or climb down and you want to run in a certain direction right away. You can just aim your camera left or right, and once your character lands and you start aiming your gun, you will face the direction you wanted to right away instead of just slowly turning your character. This control switch won't change the game completely. You'll still feel restricted to some extent compared to other third-person shooters. Eventually, though, you might learn to come to have fun with these certain close encounters with other enemies. It almost becomes like a dance between you and the other player as you're both constantly dodging each other, trying to get the aim at the other person, get the shot in to try to kill them. So you really got to time your aims and dodges correctly in order to win an encounter. Now, with all that talk about the controls out of the way, let's discuss the different game types of versus mode. There are technically 4 different game types you can play: Slayers, Team Slayers, Survivors, and Team Survivors. But it's basically just 2 game modes, just with free for all and team variations. If you played Mercenaries mode, then the Slayers game type will feel very familiar. Instead of just killing Infected to get points, you can kill both other players and Infected to get points. Players can build combos if they are able to kill multiple enemies in a row within a certain amount of time between each kill. Chaining combos together is what's essential to get high scores. If you are able to get a good route or a spot in an arena where you can get kills pretty quickly, then that could really help you win a match. The best spot I found in getting a lot of kills was in the map Village. This house with the bridge to it has a lot of enemies that spawn there, so whenever I played on this map, I would just go there. The mini bosses also grant a huge chunk of points, and they spawn close by here most of the time. However, when other players see that you are in the lead, they may hunt you down. Thus, even if you have the best spot or route, it can still get ruined when other players attack you. This may not always happen because killing other players does not give a lot of points, and it could take too long, so it could ruin your combo if you are focused on other players. That's why I only go after players if they're attacking me. If not, then I just don't bother and just focus on the infected. There were actually plenty of games that no one shot at each other and only went for infected. It was almost like 2 to 4 player co-op matches of us just killing the infected. It does get intense at moments because the combination of infected and other players can overwhelm you if you're not careful. While you might be focused on another player or a mini boss, you can get grabbed from behind and waste time, losing your combo and or getting hurt in the process. Thus, you always gotta check your surroundings and can't stay focused on one enemy for too long. My favorite character in Slayers was Tribal Sheva for 2 reasons. No, not those 2 reasons, you sick pervert. The bow and the grenade launcher are highly effective against infected and other players. The bow has infinite ammo and kills most of the weaker infected with one shot, so chaining combos is fairly easy. However, the bow does not have a laser sight like every other gun in the game, so I had to get used to aiming without it. Also, its fire rate is slow, so I had to be sure to hit my shots consistently. The ammo Sheva gets for the grenade launcher are ice rounds, which are pretty good. If I manage to get a direct shot on someone, they would freeze, and I can do this combo where I shoot my arrow and immediately melee the player, and as they're getting back up, I can shoot more arrows. I also like Star's Wesker. The Hydra and the L-Hawk Magnum are powerful weapons to use on the mini-bosses and the other players, and he even has a Samurai Edge pistol for the weaker infected. Wesker also has this ability to sprint across the map and do a melee move upon enemies. I actually never learned how to do it until after I started writing the script, so I did not really use it at all. Star's Chris is also pretty good, maybe a little too good. Although I barely used him, I had to face off other players that played him. He has electric rounds with his grenade launcher and a M29 Magnum, so usually if I got hit by the electric rounds, I would be dead because I would be stunned for a few seconds while the other player shoots me with his Magnum. The electric rounds have a good range for splash damage, so you don't necessarily need to be accurate. I played against 2 Stars Chris's once, and it was very hard to counter the electric grenade launcher and Magnum combo. Safari Chris is also pretty decent since he has the powerful M3 shotgun and 2 RPGs. The rest of the characters are decent, but you will really have a hard time winning games. BSAA Sheva and Stars and Battlesuit Jill have either sniper rifles or machine guns as their power weapons. They would not be that great against other characters that have the shotguns and magnums. If other players get up close to you with a shotgun or magnum and you only have a sniper rifle or machine gun as your only power weapon, then you're going to get smoked. Constantly dodging back and forth just to clip them with the machine gun or sniper rifle will just waste too much time, especially since they can do much more damage onto you. Other characters like BSAA Chris with his Ithaca shotgun is not as powerful as Safari Chris with his M3 shotgun. Clubbin Sheva with the Jailbreaker does not do a lot of damage either. She also has the S75 sniper rifle, but it descopes between each shot. She also has the AK-47, which has so much recoil that you will definitely have difficulty getting consistent hits on enemies. Midnight Wesker does not have a healing item, but instead has proximity mines, which are decent, but you really have to find strategic spots to put them in, like around corners or areas that people climb up or down to. While its M500 Magnum is powerful, its rate of fire is slow, so hitting consistent shots will be hard. It's not really that these characters are awful, it's just that there are better characters to choose from that have better weapon setups. The other game type, though, Survivors, has less balance issues between the characters. Survivors is essentially a deathmatch between all the players. You get points for hurting and killing other players, and lose points for getting hurt and dying. You do not get any points for killing infected, so you have to go after other players. Each of the different characters no longer have their weapon setups from the Slayer's game type. Instead, each character gets a certain grenade type and a machine gun or pistol as their weapons. Thus, the most powerful weapons such as the M3, the PSG-1, the M500, and the RPG are found throughout the map and get dropped by the mini-bosses after they are killed. Additionally, if a player dies, they drop a random weapon. People could use this strategy where if they already have a certain gun like the M3 and see it on the floor, they could discard their current M3 and pick up a new one. Discarded items disappear and cannot be picked up again, so a player can get rid of every duplicate gun they see so the opposing players cannot pick them up. This could lead to teams or players snowballing the other players where once one group gets all the power weapons, the other players will have a hard time making a comeback. Playing Survivors at first though, I was definitely having a difficult time since I was not used to the aiming yet. There were a lot of Survivors matches where I'd just be running around without a weapon since I would get killed early and lose my only gun. Thus, I really hated playing this game type, and originally I was going to talk about how much I despised this game type. I eventually realized that I probably was not being fair since I was initially a noob. Once I got the hang to the controls and switched to Type B, there were much less blowout games, and it got pretty competitive where the leading score kept flipping between the players. I even started to enjoy Survivors a lot more than Slayers, because in Survivors, everyone starts at an even playing field with the similar weapons, thus each character can be a viable choice. I mostly chose Stars Wesker and Battlesuit Jill. I'm not entirely sure if Wesker's Samurai Edge pistol is more powerful than the other characters' pistols, but that's what it seemed like to me. Also, Jill has the incendiary grenades, and the VZ-61 machine gun that she has does not have a lot of recoil. It really does not matter too much though who you choose, because you pick up new weapons throughout the match, so everyone can potentially have the same weapons. There are also time bonuses that you can pick up in both Slayers and Survivors. The time bonuses can extend the length of a match, so if you're losing, you can still give yourself a better chance to make a comeback. Thus, this always puts the pressure on the winning player or team, since their win is never really secured. I've played a lot of close call games where the losing team would win after getting time bonuses. Melee kills also extend the time by only 5 seconds, which is not a lot, but if everyone's getting melee kills, then it starts to add up. There was one game where we got so many melee kills that we were able to kill all the zombies in the match and had to wait for a few extra minutes before the game would end. Additionally, inventory management is very important in versus mode. Everything has to be done in quick succession, like giving items to teammates, reloading weapons, and dropping duplicate weapons. Reloading by using the inventory menu is much faster than actually going through the reload animation. You can also do certain actions like reloading or moving your items around the menu while you are in a melee animation. Thus, getting used to quickly navigating the inventory menu is essential to winning games. Now what about the arenas you play in? Most of the maps are taken from the story mode except for the experimental facility and the prison. For the most part, these maps are pretty fun. They are not the most balanced maps for the survivors mode, since experimental facility you can just camp the top floor, since the only ways you can get up there are the elevator and ladder, both being easily defendable. Ship deck is also so big that one team could probably just keep running away from the other team. Missile air is also kind of confusing with its different floors and multiple ladders. Each map has their own set of enemies, so it does give you a reason to switch between maps. Some maps have the regular Majini with the Executioner Majini or the Chainsaw Majini. Some maps have the Villagers with the Giant Majini. And some maps have the highly armored Majini with the Stun Rods and the Gatling Gun Majini. Or even the Reapers that can instantly kill you. Yeah, I hate those guys. Most hosts, though, do pick Public Assembly since it's the first map and possibly the most popular map. When I hosted, though, I switched from map to map after each game just to have some variety. Although, what made versus mode frustrating the most were the people that quit. There were many games where I would get the early lead and then people would just quit out. If anyone quits in a team match, it automatically ends the game. In free-for-all, as long as 2 people are in the match, the game would continue. That is only if the host does not leave. If the host leaves in a free-for-all match that was full 4 players, it would just end the game. This happened a lot when I first started playing the mode. It was probably just bad luck at first, since after a while I started getting long stretches of matches with no one quitting, even if they were getting pummeled. This really isn't the fault of the game, it's just the fault of players for quitting. What is the game's fault, though, is that if someone leaves the match and the game ends, you will not get credited for the win towards achievements. There are achievements on getting 15 wins at each of the 4 game types, and so even if you are in the lead and the game is about to end, and the host or someone on the other team quits out of the match, it won't count as a win for you. That's why I started to host matches, so the chance of the game ending was far less. Yeah, these are only achievements, but for people like me, they're fun to get. There just aren't fun when things like people quitting voids any progress you're making. Overall, while versus mode can be very fun, it can also be very frustrating at times depending on who you play with. If you like the story mode and you liked mercenaries mode, then you might like versus. It's not for everyone due to its restrictive and outdated controls, but if you are willing to give it a shot and learn its quirks, then you can definitely find some enjoyment out of it. It does take time to get used to. I wasn't even sure I was going to like it at first. However, I did enjoy it after a while. It could just be my nostalgia goggles affecting my vision since this was my first Resident Evil game of the franchise. Yeah, please don't kill me. Seeing how all these remakes of the Resident Evil games have been released recently, maybe I should just give them a try.